Yeah, I was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. My mom and dad got divorced, and so then my mom remarried and had a stepfather, and he was very much into hunting and sports. So I started to notice that there were things about me that were different. I grew up in a family where religion was a big part, a big backdrop. A little bit of a tinge of Catholic guilt and then Southern Baptist dogma. Internally, I had this knowing. And it was all that I could do to prevent others from also knowing that. One day, one of the students walked up behind me and he whispered in my ear, faggot. And I literally froze because in that moment, I realized, oh my gosh, other people have caught on to me. It was devastating to me. Meanwhile, my father had struggled with addiction his whole life and he had relapsed. And so my mom sat my brother and I down to sort of help us understand and just have a conversation with us. She said, everyone in life has a cross that they bear. Your father has addiction. Some people have cancer. And so that was her way of trying to help my brother and I understand our father's addiction. In that moment, though, I interpreted what she said as, oh, this thing that I have must be my cross. If I could be the best Christian, then God would help remove that cross. I believe that my mom did know, but denial is a real powerful thing. Denial can prevent us from seeing things. But my stepfather really rejected me. And so that was really difficult because there was something that I felt like that was inherently wrong with me. So what was going on at home was sort of similar to what was going on in my social life. There was this rejection that was happening because of who I was. I also really think that I practiced conversion therapy on myself. I would train myself to look at the girls. I had Playboy magazines curated to sort of be this version of a person that I thought that I needed to be, that I could become. I had these two friends that we would be naked around each other. There was a difference in how they felt, I imagine, than how I felt. Because they were thinking about the sex that they would be having with women. Whereas this was like erotic for me that I was around these two other men. So I knew those things. I knew those things about myself, but I repressed them. I that desire that I had or that curiosity, I pushed it down. And so I would have those experiences, but then I would go home and I would pray. There was a guy that I met in college. He was my first male sexual experience. I liked him and we would have these really nice like hangout. It wasn't just sex. It was like this person that I could sort of let my guard down. And I had to reject that part of me because I really did believe that I could go to hell for being gay. So it was almost as if like, if I looked at, food or, wanting to eat healthy, I would eat chicken and vegetables during the week and then have pizza on Saturday. And then I would work out the next day and go back to my healthy eating. I would do this thing, but then I would feel guilty and shame for doing it. So then I would work really hard to not do it again. In fact, at that same time, I was dating a young woman, and we were together for quite some time, and she was wanting to have sex with me, and I was trying to do everything I could to avoid that. I would start to go to these Bible studies, and so my sort of excuse was that I couldn't have sex with her because it was my faith, not until marriage. Even a senior in college, I was baptized. I was baptized when I was a kid, and it was this sort of public acknowledgement that I was dedicating my life even more so to God. My first job out of college was in Charlotte, North Carolina. We were drinking and I was getting intoxicated, and there was a guy at this party and he was being really nice to me and kind and talking to me, and I interpreted that as he was interested in me. After the night was over, I sort of made a move. I went over to him, and try to kiss him. And he was like, whoa, 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 you're a little drunk. You want to sleep on the couch? That was a difficult time in my life. I wound up getting a job in Monterrey, Mexico, and I started to research how to not be gay. And so I was thinking, I can't keep this up. Like, this is exhausting. I also was starting to venture out. I took a cab. This is funny. At the internet cafe, I Googled how to say gay in Spanish. I was, naive. And so the translation was Gaia. So I remember I was in a taxi and I asked the taxi driver, un bar Gaia. And he was like, what? Or okay? And I was like wanting to be secret, like un bar Gaia, like a gay bar. That word Gaia, it's not like, you don't use that. And he's like, oh, gay bar. And I was like, no, shh. So again, these opposing forces that existed within me. And it was becoming really difficult to manage that. I was involved in a church in North Carolina. I set up a fake email and asked for advice. And he sent me this national Christian magazine. The cover story was about a man who had homosexual desires, but through the grace of God, he met this wonderful woman and they're in love and they have these two beautiful children and they get on their knees every night and they pray. And I remember reading that article, and instead of being inspired, I was devastated, because in that moment, I thought about the wife. Deep down, is she still wondering if he's looking at men because he's interested? And I just left the internet cafe realizing that's a fake life that I was trying to live. There was some freedom in that allowed me to sort of answer the call, so to speak. I realized that I had to sort of break up with God. I had to break up with my understanding of the God that I grew up with, this sort of old man on a cloud judging me. And I stopped praying. And maybe a few days later, I met my boyfriend, Leon. I couldn't stop thinking about him. I would hear songs and I'm like, oh my gosh, the lyrics. I understood them in a different way because I was feeling emotions that I had not allowed myself to feel before. I felt like I wanted to go on a mountaintop and announce to the world how I felt, this feeling. I lived in Mexico for almost 2 years, so we broke up. So the next year there was really difficult because I was still very much in love with him. But it was also really difficult too because he wasn't out. And so when I would go to his house, he had his straight friends and then he had his gay friends. But he very much lived a very straight life, especially in Monterrey, Mexico at that time. It was very homophobic. And so when we would go to the movies, as an example, if we were with a group of people, I would sit on this end and then 7 people and then him. When I was with his gay friends, I would sit on his lap or we would hold hands. It was very difficult to manage that. But meeting Leon helped me come out of the closet. That changed everything. When I got back to Tucson, that was sort of the next phase of my journey, my identity. I did come out to my family while I was living in Mexico. I went home for Christmas and it was lunch with mom, dinner with brother, lunch with cousin. I mean, I literally came out. It was like a coming out tour. Some people in my family responded very supportive. Some people didn't. And my mom was one of those people. She said, I can love the sinner, but hate the sin, which is a very Christian biblical thing. So that sort of set the tone for our journey over the next decade of healing. I didn't really have a lot of positive male role models when I grew up. There was a man in Phoenix who was really involved in the HRC, and I credit him to being someone who really changed my life in a lot of ways. And he was the first out gay mayor of Tempe, I believe. It was my first real experience with homosocialization, getting to know other gay men. I did a lot of nonprofit work. That was kind of my career background. And so that's really what kind of led me to get involved in advocacy work at a national level, was through him. And so that's ultimately what led me to moving out to Los Angeles, was working for that organization. Unconsciously, I still felt that I wasn't deserving or worthy. And so I was making choices in my life based off of that, which was drugs, alcohol. It's not like a light switch. You can just be in the closet, reject core aspects of yourself, and then the light switch turns on and everything's great. I worked at the bar for 11 years, and for 7 of those years, I was sober. And so when people would find out that I was sober, like, a customer would come up, and it was very common for someone to like order shots and then be like, I want to get you a shot. And then I would say, oh, no, I'm fine. No, come on, I want to get you a shot. I'm like, no, I don't drink. It's okay. And the response that I would get, you don't drink? That happened a lot. And so people started to talk to me about sobriety, and they'd have questions about, how did I get sober? And what did I do? So I started to kind of have those conversations with people. And I felt really like I was, again, kind of taking something in my own life that was painful and then using it for the sake of good on behalf of someone else. While I was bartending, I also was teaching social emotional learning, and it was really powerful for me. And I started getting involved in this youth advocacy coalition in Los Angeles. And one day, PFLAG, LA chapter, has a speakers bureau. So I'd never done that, shared my coming out story. And so I go to this high school. And so when it came to my turn, I just shared 5 minutes of my coming out story, which happened to be the story of me meeting my first boyfriend and falling in love. And after that, we opened it up to the Q&A, and all these young people in class, this is like a high school, and all these young people are raising their hand and asking me questions. Do I still talk to him? Did we break up? And what I realized is they didn't necessarily relate to me being gay, but they related to me being in a relationship and me falling in love, because they've experienced that too. And it was through that conversation that they were able to see their fellow students that maybe the week before they were calling faggot or bullying, kids, as someone who meets someone and falls in love and breaks up and has their heart broken. And so it was this really beautiful experience. And so that's, for me, what I wanted to do more of. For me, it wasn't like overnight my family was all of a sudden accepting. My mom, eventually became a big supporter of mine. And so I was good with my family. I'd go home to Arizona and everything was great. And then my brother and my sister, I have a brother and a sister, they started to have kids. And so I became an uncle. And so I'm Uncle Chris, and I'm a really great uncle, and I love my nieces and nephews. And so one of my childhood friends is sitting next to me, and it's a female. My nephew runs up to me in front of everyone, and he whispers, Uncle Chris, is she your girlfriend? And everyone started laughing, and it's not like he wanted me to give him an explanation. He just had the thought, asked the question, and then ran off and continued to play. The next day, I said, Mom, do you think that Luke and Selena have talked to their kids? And my mom's like, no, Chris, they're too young to understand. He could understand a girlfriend. Why couldn't he understand a boyfriend? So I started to ask parents that I knew, friends of mine with kids, other family members, and a lot of the people I was talking to were telling me, oh, we just don't know what to say, or what age is the best age. So I started to have conversations with my nieces and nephews, and I asked if they knew anyone at school who was LGBTQ, and they're like, oh no, we don't have any LGBTQ kids at our school. And I was like, you don't? Out of your whole school, no one is LGBTQ? And they're like, well, maybe there is, but no one talks about it. I'm like, huh, why don't you think they talk about it? And they responded like, oh, well, maybe they don't want to get bullied or people will make fun of them. I'm like, maybe you could be an ally for them. And so I realized like there are things that we could do, that I could do as an uncle. So I wanted to help encourage, families to have proactive conversations. Some people think that if we talk to children about being gay, that they're going to become gay. But then you would have to use the same argument for, well, I was talked to about girlfriends. It didn't make me heterosexual. I'm still gay. In fact, I tried really hard. I had girlfriends. So it's the same argument. We can only take others as far as we've gone ourselves. That snowballed into the work I do today. I wound up getting a publishing contract, and it was literally like I felt like I found a serum that could like help people. And so I wrote this book called Raising LGBTQ Allies, A Parent's Guide to Changing the Messages from the Playground. And even though I was this openly now gay man, I played on the same playground, meaning that I grew up in the heteronormative culture and absorbed the subconscious beliefs about what it means to be gay. When my nephew asked me if I had a girlfriend, if I said, yes, this is my girlfriend, they wouldn't have thought second about that. But the moment I asked if he knew I was gay, oh, he's too young to understand that. Most of the beliefs that we have aren't our own. They're passed down from our families or from our communities, from our cultures. And so part of the process of becoming our self-actualized, individuated person is to start to question, like, is this true for me? We just sort of take on these beliefs unconsciously. So much of our lives and our choices are operated from the unconscious. And it's the same thing as it relates to sexuality. I had to do a lot of the work within myself to unlearn the things that I learned. Yeah, that scared kid, the one who had the body experience when that kid walked up to him and whispered faggot. That same kid who wanted to shut down, run, hide, absolutely did not think that he would be here today talking about these things and feeling really excited and purposeful. The most powerful thing any of us could do is to be able to have access to the younger parts of ourselves that we, for whatever reason, had to shut away, hide, disconnect from. I have a picture of myself on my desk, and I keep it there as a way to just consciously always be in touch with him and to let him know I see him and that he's there. And I think even my relationship that I have with my nieces and nephews, they sort of are representatives in some way of me making amends to that younger part of me who I shut away. Part of my healing has been to be able to, be this positive force for younger people in my life.
He grew up in silence with secrets to hide, afraid of the whispers, the looks from outside, and no guiding light, only shadows so strong, chained by the voices that silenced his song. He grew up in silence with secrets to hide, afraid of the whispers, the looks from outside. No guiding light, only shadows so strong, chained by the voices that silenced his song. Messages from the playground. Messages from the playground. Messages Taking truth from many, but leaving him denied. Love spoke to his heart, where truth could reside, and lit a new fire he could never hide.